So welcome back to my channel. This is the second part of the video, Introduction to Dental Anatomy. In this video, we will go through all the terminologies and also the questions of NEET MDS and INI-CT MDS. And if you are here only for the entrance exam preparation, you can skip to those parts only. I have added them in the timeline. And if you still have not subscribed to my channel, please do. So let's just start. Let's first start with human dentition. Okay. Humans are diaphyodonts, pterodonts, brachydonts, and thecodonts. Let's just simplify what all these terms mean. The first is diaphyodont. Humans are diaphyodonts, and all the other organisms that are diaphyodonts means that they will have or they will possess two sets of dentition in their entire lifetime. Okay. The first set of dentition that they will possess is called as deciduous dentition, or primary dentition, or milk teeth, or lacteal teeth. And the second set of dentition that humans possess is known as permanent dentition, or secondary dentition, or succedaneous teeth. Okay, we'll get into the depth of what succedaneous means. So diaphyodonts means the organisms which will possess two sets of teeth in their entire lifetime. These primary teeth, they erupt soon after birth. Okay, but the permanent ones, they erupt after the age of 6 years. Okay, there is a difference between both the dentitions, that the ones that is the deciduous dentition, it erupts soon after birth, but the permanent ones, they erupt after the age of 6 years. It is most commonly seen in humans and also seen in bats and guinea pigs. There are two more terms. One is monophyodonts, and the another one is polyphyodonts. The names clear it very much up, that if di means 2 and mono means 1, poly means more than 2. So if diaphyodonts are the organisms which possess two sets of teeth in their entire lifetime, monophyodonts will have one and polyphyodonts will possess multiple. So the polyphyodonts have the ability to replace the teeth that have fallen out, but monophyodonts do not have such ability. Diaphyodonts have it to some extent. For example, you might have seen in kids, when the front teeth in their mouths, they fall out, they get replaced by the permanent teeth, right? So it is true to some extent. But if the permanent teeth fall out, in case of humans, if the permanent teeth fall out, there will be no such mechanism or no such ability to replace those naturally. Yes, there are some ways that we can replace a missing tooth in humans with implants or with FPDs or with RPDs, but naturally it is not possible for humans to regrow another tooth. Most of the mammals are monophyodonts or diaphyodonts, but there are some exceptions to mammals as well, those who are polyphyodonts. Such examples of mammals who are polyphyodonts is some elephants, kangaroos, and also the reptiles such as crocodiles. There are also some fish like sharks who are also polyphyodonts, and the example of monophyodonts is platypus. Yes, Platypus the parry from Phineas and Ferb. Next term is heterodonts. Humans and mammals are heterodonts. What it means is that the teeth are of different types. Okay, what types mean is that they vary in their shapes. Example, this. The shape of incisors is different. The shape of canine is different from premolars and that from molars. Okay. But homodonts mean, there is another term known as homodonts. It means the organisms will have the teeth that are similar in shape. Okay. They may vary in size, but the overall shape will be very much similar. But in case of heterodonts, that is humans, we do not possess, all of our teeth are not of the same size and also not of the same shape. Okay, so they differ in size and also shape. But in case of homodonts, they do not differ in their shapes. The example of homodonts is fish, some fishes, and amphibians. Next term is brachydonts. Okay, humans are also brachydonts. Brachydont means that they will have shorter crowns but longer roots. But hypsodonts mean that they will have shorter roots and longer crowns. Okay, brachydonts mean crowns are smaller but the roots are longer. Okay. Example for hypsodont is reptiles. This is an important question for NEET MDS. What are hypsodonts? Okay. So mark this as an important question. The hypsodonts have larger crowns and smaller roots. Next term is thecodont. The example is humans that we know. Okay, it means this is the type of dentition in which the teeth are embedded in the deep sockets of the jawbone. Okay, for example, if this hole is the bone, the tooth is present like this. It is embedded into the bone. Okay, it is present inside of the bone. So humans are diaphyodonts, heterodonts, brachydonts, and thecodonts. All these terms are important for if you are preparing for NEET MDS or INICET MDS. So you have to mug these all up. The most important question here is this: what are hypsodonts? The organisms in which the crown or the type of dentition in which the tooth has smaller root and longer crown. Okay. Next is attachment of teeth to the jawbone. Okay, it shows how the tooth is attached to the bones. The first type is thecodont. We just read that the tooth is embedded into the bone. If this is the bone, the tooth is embedded into the bone. Right? You can see the difference. In case of zacrodont, the tooth is present over the bone and not embedded into the bone. And in case of pleurodont, again, the tooth is not present inside the bone. It is just present over the bone. The difference between acrodont and pleurodont is acrodont, it is present directly over the crest of the ridge. But in case of pleurodont, the tooth is present on the either side of the ridge, either buccal or lingual. So in case of acrodont, the tooth is present directly over the crest of the ridge. Crest of the ridge means the highest point. It is present right over on the ridge. The tooth is present. But in case of pleurodont, the tooth is present either buccally or lingually. In case of acrodont, it is more prone to wear and it is less secure as compared to the other dentitions. Acrodont, the example of acrodont is some lizards and other reptiles. An example of pleurodont is also some other lizards and amphibians. The pleurodont, they have the ability to effectively grasp and process a variety of prey. In acrodonts, this adaptation, the adaptation in which the tooth is present directly over the crest of the ridge, it influences the animal's feeding habits and also limit them to softer prey to avoid damaging their tooth because these kind of teeth are more prone to damage and more prone to loss. Next are buenodont. These are the kind of animals that have teeth with rounded cusps on their molars. They have rounded cusp on their molars. This is more common in case of humans, pigs, bears, and other mammals. These kind of the rounded cusps of these teeth are well suited for grinding and crushing the food and these are more ideal for plant-based or animal-based diet. In case of lophodonts, this is the kind of dentition in which there are elongated ridges on the chewing surfaces of the molars. They are little elevated or elongated ridges over the molars. These help in grinding and shredding of the food. This is more common in herbivores. Okay, horses, rodents. These are more common in these kind of organisms. The lobes in this, it provides a larger surface for breaking down the fibrous plant material, which is very much essential for animals with diets that are primarily composed of vegetation, that are herbivores, the herbivore organisms. In the third type, Solenodont, it is a type of tooth morphology in which the cusps are of crescent shape. On the occlusal surfaces or on the chewing surfaces of the molars, these ridges or these crescent shaped ridges are known as selanes, and these are aligned along the length of the tooth. These are also important for grinding down the fibrous plant material. This is also seen in deers, other kettles, the ones who eat grass usually. Okay. There's another picture. You can see these. This is the type. This is the picture of Solenodont. You can see these ridges, crescent shaped. Next topic is evolutionary stages of molars. The first type is Haplodont. In this case, the type of tooth, it is the most simple structure. Okay, only these conical shape of tooth are present. There is no occlusion as such. We will not call it occlusion. They just type of fit into each other. Okay, it is the most simple form of tooth. It is the oldest form of tooth, oldest, or you can say primitive. The crown and the root, both of the portions are of conical shape, and the example of this is reptiles. This is more common in the case of animals which only take plant-based diet, which do not require more grinding. Okay. Next type is triconodont dentition. This is characterized by the molars having 3 prominent cusps, and they are arranged in a linear pattern. They're arranged in one single line. This is more commonly seen in early mammals. Okay, they are typically arranged in a linear series of sharp cutting surfaces. These are designed for the animals who eat meat. Okay, carnivores are animals. These require sharp teeth. You can see all of these 3 cusps are present in one single line, and the middle cusp is the largest. Next type is tritubercular. The tritubercular dentition has 3 cusps, the same that were present in the triconodont, but the difference is the cusp present here, they are not present in a linear pattern. They are present in a triangular pattern. In triconodont, they were present in a linear pattern, but in case of tritubercular, they are present in a triangular pattern. They are more used for meat and animal-based diets. Each cusp is involved in the processing of the food for effective grinding and shearing of the food. In case of quadritubercular, there are present 4 cusps, and they are present in a shape of a diamond or a square. They're present in the shape of diamond or a square, and these are more effective and they have a broader surface. They are the most effective among all the 4 types of teeth, and they also occlude. These also occlude, but in case of Haplodont, there is no occlusion seen as such. So if a question comes in which kind of dentition occlusion is not seen, the answer has to be Haplodont. Okay. Questions can come as image based. Directly these images can come, and you just have to name that what kind of dentition is this and what kind of dentition is this or this. You just have to remember the diagrams that in triconodont, all of the cusps are present in a linear pattern, but in case of tritubercular, they're present in a triangular pattern, and in case of quadritubercular, they're present as a rhomboidal, diamond, or a square shape. And in Haplodont, these are just conical teeth, and they do not occlude. Next is the sequence of development of various cusps of maxillary molars and mandibular molars. In case of maxillary molars, there are usually 4 number of cusps. This represents mesial surface, this represents distal, lingual surface, and buccal surface. Okay, the first cusp that develops is this one, this mediolingual, and it is called as protocon. You have to remember this in sequence, that the first cusp that develops in case of maxillary molars is mesiolingual, that is called as protocon. The second cusp that develops is mesiobuccal. It develops after the protocon and it is known as paracon. The third cusp that develops is metacon, and this is the distobuccal. Distobuccal cusp and develops at the third number, and the last cusp is called as hypocon, and it is distolingual. Okay, in case of maxillary, we will not say lingual, we will say palatal. Okay. And then comes mandibular molars. You have to remember this is in the same sequence, that the first cusp that develops is mesiolingual and it is called as protocon, paracon, metacon, and hypocon. It's the largest cusp. Protocon is the largest cusp. Okay. Mesiolingual, mesiobuccal, and distobuccal. All these 3 cusps are primary cusps, but the distolingual cusp is the accessory cusp. All these are important for NEET, MDS, and INI-CT. As we move from first maxillary molar to third maxillary molar, the size keeps on decreasing. We can also say that maxillary molar is somewhat of a heart shape. Okay. You can see in this picture, the first cusp that develops is the protocon. That is the mesiolingual cusp. Now this is the mesial surface, this is the lingual surface, buccal and distal. First cusp that develops is mesiolingual, second cusp that develops is mesiobuccal, and the third cusp that develops is distobuccal, and the last one is hypocon. Okay. In case of mandibular molars, we use the term cornered, so as to avoid any confusion between the cusps of mandibular and maxillary molars. In case of maxillary, we use the term cone, but in case of mandibular molars, we use the term coned. The first cusp which develops in mandibular molars is mesiobuccal, but in case of case of maxillary molars, it is the mesiolingual one. In mandibular molars, it is a mesiobuccal, and it is also the largest cusp, which is known as protoconid, and it develops first. The second cusp which develops is the mesiolingual one, and it is called as metaconid. Third one is the distobuccal cusp, and it is called as hypoconid. And the fourth one is the distolingual cusp, and it is called as entoconid. There is another cusp, this is the distal cusp, and it is the smallest one, and it is also called as convolute or hypoconvolute. Mandibular molar and its cusps are very important from NEET MDS point of view. So mark this as a very important question and try to remember it. In case of permanent maxillary first molar, the largest cusp and the cusp which develops first is the mesiolingual cusp and it is called as protocon. Second cusp is the mesiobuccal cusp and it is called as paracon. Distobuccal cusp is known as metacon and distolingual cusp is known as hypocon. And in case of permanent mandibular first molar, the largest cusp is the mesiobuccal cusp and it is called as protoconid. Mesiolingual cusp is known as metaconid and it develops second. Third cusp which develops is hypoconid. Fourth cusp is entoconid and the smallest is the distal cusp and it is also known as convolute or hypoconvolute. Let's start with human dentitions now. We already know that there are two sets of human dentitions. First is deciduous and the second is permanent. Now permanent is also known as the succedaneous dentition. It is called so because it replaces the tooth or teeth that are shed in the deciduous dentition. Okay. For example, when the central incisors, the primary central incisors shed off, permanent central incisors replace the deciduous ones. And the same with the lateral incisors. The primary lateral incisors are replaced by the prominent lateral incisors, and primary canines are replaced by the secondary canines. Okay, but then comes the primary first molar and primary second molar. They are replaced by first and second premolar. Okay, in case of this permanent first, second, and third molar, these three teeth are not called as succedaneous teeth because they do not succeed any teeth. They do not have any predecessors. Okay, so teeth up to the second premolar, only those are known as the succedaneous teeth because they replace the deciduous dentition. Okay, and the deciduous dentition, it starts erupting at the age of 6 months is when the first tooth erupts, and that is the mandibular central incisor. And it starts erupting. The permanent dentition starts at the age of 6 years, and the first permanent tooth to erupt is mandibular first molar. These two questions are also important. You can mark them. The first primary tooth to erupt in the oral cavity is mandibular central incisor. The first permanent tooth to appear or to erupt in the oral cavity is the mandibular first molar. Okay. Eruption in the deciduous dentition is completed at the age of 2.5 to 3 years, and in case of permanent dentition, it is completed by the age of 12 to 13 years. It means all the teeth in case of deciduous dentition will be erupted by the age of 3, and in case of permanent by 13. And there is one exception to permanent dentition, that is third molars. They erupt by the age of 18 to 25 years. Okay. Another difference is the total number of teeth. Here there are 20 and here there are 32. 10 in each jaw, that is 10 in maxilla and 10 in mandible. 10 in each jaw and here 16 in each jaw. 5 in each quadrant and here 8 in each quadrant. Next is arrangement of teeth in dental arches. We know there is one maxillary arch and the second is mandibular arch. Okay, so there is one median that goes through the center of the jaws and it divides it into two parts. The first is One is right side and the second is left side. Okay, the teeth in each jaw are arranged symmetrically on the either side of this median plane. Okay, this is the right one and this is the left. Right and left. So there are total 4 quadrants. Okay, first, second, third, and fourth. We started in a clockwise direction. Okay, and we move from the right side to the left side. So this will be the first quadrant, second quadrant, this is the third quadrant, and this is the fourth quadrant. We start from maxilla. Maxillary right is the first quadrant, maxillary left is the second quadrant, mandibular left is the third quadrant, and mandibular right is the fourth. All these 4 quadrants, they carry equal number of teeth in the absence of any pathology. So if there is no pathology whatsoever, no pathology present, there will be equal number of teeth in all of the quadrants, and the corresponding teeth in left and right side of each dental arches, they are each other's mirror images with similar size and similar form. Now, what are anterior teeth and what are posterior teeth? Okay, from one side to the other side of the canine. This is the distal surface and this is the medial surface. Medial surface is one which is closer to the midline. Mesial surface is the one which is closer to the midline. So if this is a midline, so the surface closer to the midline is the mesial surface, and the surface which is away from the midline is the distal surface. Okay. So from one distal surface of the canine of one side to the distal surface of the other canine of the other side, all the teeth that come in between are called as the anterior teeth. The same is in the case of mandible. From one canine to the other canine, these 3 are called as mandibular anterior teeth. Posterior teeth start from first premolar and goes up to the third molar. So first premolar, second premolar, first molar, second molar, and third molar. And same on the other side of the mandible. Okay, first premolar, second premolar, first molar, second molar, and third molar. These comprise of the posterior teeth. Same as in maxilla, from first premolar to the third molar, and on the other side, from first premolar to the third molar. We move on to classes of teeth. As teeth in humans are not of the same size and not of the same shape, so therefore, depending on the form and function, there are 4 classes of teeth. The first are incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. Okay, this is how they look and this is how they vary in shape. This is for the permanent dentition. Okay, and we know that in case of deciduous dentition, premolars are not present. So, in case of deciduous dentition, the classes of teeth present are incisors, canines, and molars. But in case of permanent dentition, the classes of teeth that are present: incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. This is another difference between primary and permanent dentition, that primary dentition do not have premolars. Let's move on to the functions of each tooth and where their names have come from. They have mainly come from Latin words. Let's start with the first one, incisors. Incisors have come from the word insider, which in Latin means to cut into. So the basic function of incisor is incising, that is basically cutting and nipping. And hence they are called as cutting teeth. Next is canine. It comes from the word Latin canis, which means dog or hound. Canine teeth are very much prominent and well-developed corner teeth in the dog family, and they are more prominent in carnivorous animals for catching their prey. But in case of humans, their function is considerably diminished, and they basically function almost as incisors. They're also known as cuspids. Canines are also known as cuspids because they have one large primary cusp. Next are premolars. Premolars mean the teeth which come before the molar. Okay, they are also called as bicuspids. Bicuspids. Canines are called as cuspids, and premolars are called as bicuspids because they usually have two cusps, but it is not mandatory to have them two cusps. Okay. Molars, it comes from the word molaris, which also means millstone, and because they have wide occlusal surfaces, the function of these teeth is to grind and triturate the food. These are the main teeth which are responsible for chewing. Incisors and canines are usually for biting and tearing of the food, and the whole grinding is molars are responsible. Molars and premolars are responsible for grinding and triturating of the food, but molars contribute more. So classes of teeth in human dentitions are: there are 4 classes in permanent dentition and 3 classes in primary dentition. The permanent dentition has incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. But in case of primary dentitions, there are no teeth such as premolars in the primary dentition. Therefore, there are incisors, canines, and molars. We have divided the teeth in 4 classes in permanent dentition based on their form and their function and their shape. So, 4 in case of permanent dentition and 3 in case of primary dentition. Next are the types of teeth. Now, types are divided within one class. For example, differences between the central and the lateral incisors, or the differences between the first and second premolars, or between first, second, and third molars. Okay. So, if we are supposed to, or we are asked to differentiate on the basis of types, we will say if it is a central incisor or a lateral incisor, or a first premolar or a second premolar, first molar or second molar or third molar. This is how we divide the types within the each class. Okay. So classes, what incisors are, what canines are, premolars and molars, and how will we differentiate between the types, whether it is the central incisor or the lateral incisor, or first premolar or second premolar, or first or second or third molars. This topic is important for Viva questions and also from theory point of view, because there can be a question in university exams where you have to describe the trait characteristics of teeth. Okay, so why do we need to describe a trait of a tooth? Whenever we are describing the anatomy of a tooth, we compare its morphological characteristics with other teeth. So if there are any similarities or differences among both. What is a trait? Trait is a distinguishing characteristic or characteristic quality or attribute. The first trait that describes a tooth is set trait. It tells us if the tooth belongs to the permanent dentition or the primary dentition. Okay. So set traits tells us the tooth belongs to the permanent dentition or the primary dentition. Next comes the arch trait. Arch trait distinguishes maxillary teeth from the mandibular teeth. For example, mandibular molars usually have 2 roots and maxillary molars have usually 3 roots. And in case of this permanent dentition, if we talk about set trait, the primary dentition, it has more bulbous crowns and they have constricted necks. They have more bulbous crown and constricted necks as compared to the secondary dentition. They are also whitish in color than the secondary dentition. We will do a huge chart where we will be distinguishing between the primary dentition and the secondary dentition. But for the time being, you can remember these 3 things: more bulbous crowns, constricted necks, and more whitish color. And the arch trait, it distinguishes the teeth whether it is a mandibular molar or a maxillary molar, like any tooth, if it is a maxillary tooth or a mandibular tooth. Okay. Third is classed trait. It distinguishes the 4 classes of teeth, that is incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. For example, incisors have straight incisal edges, that is very much efficient for cutting. Canines have single pointed cusps for piercing of the food, like this. Will make more clear diagrams later on. So you can just, they have straight incisal edge, okay, for cutting, and canines have single pointed cusp for piercing of the food. Premolars might have 2 cusps or 3 cusps for the shearing of the food, okay, and molars have more than 2 cusps, and they are also multi-rooted. Last one is the type trait. Type is if it is central incisor or lateral incisor. If it is a central incisor or a lateral incisor, if it is the first premolar or the second, or the first molar or second, or the third molar. So this is how you describe a tooth, whether it is from the permanent dentition or from the primary dentition. Next, you describe if it is a mandibular tooth or a maxillary tooth. Next is class trait, if it is an incisor or a canine or a premolar or a molar. And last is the type trait, if it is a central incisor. If it is an incisor, then what kind of incisor it is? Is it a central incisor or a lateral one? So if it is a premolar, is it the first premolar or the second one? And if it is a molar, is it the first molar or the second or the third? This is how you describe the trait categories of teeth. Next is nomenclature of teeth. So teeth can be named on the basis of their set, arch, class, type, and size. The name of a specific tooth would include all the information, whether it belongs to a primary dentition or a permanent dentition, or it is a maxillary tooth or mandibular tooth, or which class and which type it belongs to, whether it is from the left side or the right side. For example, we can do primary, maxillary, right, lateral, incisor. We have to start with the set first, whether the set is primary or permanent. And then we have to tell the arch, if it is a maxillary or the mandibular arch. So this is a maxillary arch. And then we have to tell the side, if it is from the right side or the left. And then is the tooth type. You can say type or class. In case of canines, there is no type, so we'll only write the class for that. For example, if we have to tell about the maxillary canine, we will say secondary, maxillary, right canine. In case of this first example, lateral incisor, it means the type, and incisor only means the class. Let's do one more example. Secondary or permanent mandibular left first molar. So molar here describes the class trait. First here describes the type trait, that is, it is a first molar. Secondary here is the set trait, and mandibular is the arch trait. And this you have to write what side it belongs to. I hope it is understood now. Next is dental formula in humans. The number and type of teeth present in a dentition, it can be expressed in the form of a dental formula. The dental formula is used to differentiate the human dentitions from that of the other species. Okay, it is different for primary dentition and for secondary dentition. Since the left and the right halves of the dental arches are exact mirror images of each other, the dental formula include the teeth present in one side of the mouth only. Okay, the different classes of teeth represented are represented by the first letter of their names. Okay, I for incisors, C for canines, PM for premolars, and M for molars. So how do we write the dental formula? We will first write that I represents incisors, and then we'll draw a horizontal line, and above the horizontal line will represent the number of teeth present in one half of the maxillary arch. So there are two incisors, okay, and two incisors in the maxillary half and two incisors in the mandibular half, okay. And then comes canines. C for canine, one horizontal line. One canine is present in one half of the maxillary arch and one canine is present in the one half of mandibular arch. And in case of primary dentition, there are no premolars, so we'll straight away write molars and then one horizontal line, and two molars are present in one half of the maxillary arch and same number of molars in case of mandibular arch. So it comes out to be 2, 1, 2. It represents one quadrant. This represents one maxillary quadrant and this represents one mandibular quadrant. Okay. And for secondary dentition, in case of secondary dentition, we'll write incisors first. I represent incisors and then we'll draw a line, and same the number of incisors that are present in the primary dentition and same are present in the case of permanent dentition. And then comes canine, same number of canine, 1 and 1 in each half of maxilla and in each half of mandible. And then comes premolar. So this is secondary dentition and therefore it will have premolars, and two premolars in one half of the maxillary arch and two premolars in one half of the mandibular arch. And in case of molars, we will have three molars, first, second and third molar, and same in the mandible. So this also represents one quadrant of the maxillary arch and this represents one quadrant of the mandibular arch. So in case of primary dentition, the dental formula comes out to be 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or you can simply say 2, 1, 2 upon 2, 1, 2. Okay, or you can also write it. You can also write it as this. And in case of permanent dentition, you can write it as 2, 1, 2, 3. It is important for Viva. Okay, 2, 1, 2 is for primary dentition and 2, 1, 2, 3 is for secondary dentition. You can also calculate the total number of. It comes out to be 2, 1, this 5, and this also 5. So at 1, it represents 10 number of teeth on one side. 5 in maxilla and 5 in mandible on one side. So the left side has 5 maxillary teeth and 5 mandibular teeth in case of primary dentition, and in case of secondary dentition, we will have 8 each. 8 in each quadrant and 16 in each arch. Next topic is the stages of human dentition. There are 3 stages through which a human dentition develops. The first is the deciduous dentition period, second is mixed dentition period, and the third is permanent dentition period. The first, that is the deciduous dentition period, it starts when the first tooth, it erupts into the oral cavity, and the first tooth that erupts into the oral cavity we know as mandibular central incisors, which erupts at the age of 6 months. So this is when we can say that the deciduous dentition period has started. And this deciduous dentition period, it ends when the first permanent tooth erupts, that is the first mandibular first molar, the first permanent tooth. So the deciduous dentition period starts from 6 months of age and lasts up to the age of 6 years. Okay, and this is when the oral motor behavior and the speech are established. This is the period when these kind of things the child starts to develop. Next, the next dentition period is the mixed dentition period. It is also known as the transitional period. It is also known as the transitional period because the dentition, it transits from the deciduous to the permanent dentition. Okay, it starts from the age of 6 years and it ends when the last tooth or when the last permanent tooth erupts. When it has erupted, then it ends, and then after that the dentition period is known as the permanent dentition period. Okay, it starts with the eruption of first mandibular molar when the deciduous dentition ends, and it finishes when the mandibular second molar erupts. Mandibular second molar marks the end of the mixed dentition period. Okay, It's we know that it starts from the age of 6 and it lasts up to the age of 12 years. In this case, both permanent and permanent and primary teeth are present. This is the feature of this transitional period, that it has both primary and permanent teeth. Okay. In this period, as we discussed earlier, that the central incisors, the primary central incisors are replaced by the permanent central incisors. Primary lateral incisors are replaced by the permanent lateral incisors. Primary canines replaced by permanent canines. Primary first and second molar are replaced by the first and second premolar. Okay. There are no predecessors for the first, second, and third secondary molars. And please note that the successors of primary molars are the permanent premolars and not the permanent molars. And during this mixed dentition period, significant changes takes place. That is the significant growth of the jaws and replacement of the 20 primary teeth by the permanent teeth. Okay. The third dentition period is the permanent dentition period. It is well established by the age of 13 years with eruption of all the permanent teeth except for the third molars, which erupt later in the life, that is 18 to 25 years of age. The permanent molars have no deciduous predecessors. This we have discussed already, that first, second, and the third secondary molars, they do not have any predecessors. That is, they do not replace any primary teeth, but they erupt distal to the last primary tooth. That is, the tooth that is present, the last tooth that is present in case of primary dentition is the second primary molar. Okay. So, the first molar, it erupts after the second molar. It will erupt after this molar. The first secondary molar will erupt after the second primary molar. I know it sounds a little confusing if you are reading all of this for the first time, but it does get easier. You do not need to panic. It is very easy. You just have to be able to say it out loud comfortably. Okay. So, the secondary first molar, it erupts distally. Distally means away from the midline. Distal to primary second molar. Okay. So, as the permanent first molar, it erupts distally or distal to the primary second molar. They extend the dental arches at the back of the mouth as the jaw size increases in size and the child grows. Sorry, I said mandibular second molar is the last permanent tooth to erupt before the third molar, but it is the maxillary second molar. This is the last tooth before the third molars to erupt into the oral cavity. Okay, this is the last tooth. Next topic is the parts of a tooth. There are two parts of a tooth. We know that the first part is crown and the second part is root. This is crown. This is the root, this hole. So, a crown is the portion of the tooth that projects above the gum line into the oral cavity, while root is a portion of the tooth that is embedded into the jawbone. This hole is the jawbone and the root is embedded inside the jawbone. Crown and root, when they join, the part where they join is known as the neck, or this line is known as the cervical line. This is the cervical line where the crown joins the root. There are two terms. One is clinical crown and another is anatomical crown. So, what is the difference between these two terms? Whatever part of a tooth we see into the oral cavity, it is known as the clinical crown. That means whatever part of tooth we can see by our naked eyes or we can see in the oral cavity is known as the clinical crown, which we can see clinically. But the anatomical crown is the part that is covered by the enamel. It is covered by the enamel. Whatever part of the tooth is covered by enamel is known as the anatomical crown, and clinical crown is the part of the tooth which is seen in the oral cavity. Now, what are clinical root and anatomical root? It is the same. Only difference is clinical root and anatomical root. Clinical root is whatever we cannot see. This part, this whole part, I should change colors. The part which we cannot see into the oral cavity of the tooth is known as the clinical root, the part which is not visible in the oral cavity. And anatomical root is the part of the tooth which is covered by the cementum. In case of anatomical crown, whatever part of the tooth is covered by the enamel, is our anatomical crown, and whatever part of the tooth is covered by cementum is our anatomical root. This question is important for theory questions because it comes as key. What do you mean by clinical crown and what are the differences among these? The clinical crown may be smaller or larger than the anatomical crown. There can be two situations. The first is when the clinical crown is smaller than the anatomical crown. In this case, the clinical crown is smaller than the anatomical crown because this is a newly erupted tooth. What happens in a newly erupted tooth is some part of the crown, it is still into the gingiva or still into the bone, which is not exposed. So the part we already know that the anatomical crown is the part which is covered by the enamel, but clinical crown is the only portion that is visible into the oral cavity. So here the clinical crown is smaller than the anatomical crown. The second situation in which the clinical crown is larger or longer than the anatomical crown is when the anatomic root gets exposed into the oral cavity in case of gingival recession. So in case of gingival recession, the anatomical crown is smaller than the clinical crown. But in case of a newly erupted tooth, anatomic crown is larger than the clinical crown. For clinical root and anatomical root, in case of newly erupted tooth, we discussed that the anatomical crown is larger than the clinical crown. But in case of roots, the clinical root is longer or larger than the anatomical root because the part of the crown, this part of the crown that is below the gingiva, it is considered as the part of the root only. Okay. So in case of newly erupted tooth, the anatomical root, it is smaller than the clinical root. It was opposite in the case of crown, that the anatomical crown was larger than the clinical crown. But in case of roots, clinical root is larger than the anatomical root. And in case of gingival recession, more of the root is exposed. So the exposed part of the root is considered as the part of the clinical crown. So the anatomical root is longer than the clinical root. We can discuss these pictures. In the first picture, this is a case of gingival enlargement. This is a case of gingival enlargement in which the gingiva has enlarged or inflamed. In this case, this is a crown portion, this is a crown portion. The clinical crown is smaller than the anatomical crown. Why is the case so? Because the part of the crown, it is covered by the gingiva. Okay, so gingiva is covering more part of the crown, therefore less of the crown is visible to us. And in case of root, would the anatomical root be larger or the clinical root? You can remember this the way that in case of crown and root, these will both go opposite. For in this case, the anatomical crown is larger, so therefore the anatomical root will be smaller in this case, and the clinical root will be larger. How will the clinical root be larger? Because less part of the tooth is visible to us. So the part of the tooth which is not visible to us is considered as the clinical root. Therefore, in case of gingival enlargement, clinical crown will be smaller and the clinical root will be larger or longer. Okay. Let's do another example. This is a case of gingival recession. In this tooth, the gingiva has receded below. So, the tooth is appearing longer. Therefore, the clinical crown is longer than the anatomical crown here. Whatever part of the tooth it is visible to us or visible into the oral cavity is considered as the crown, is considered as the clinical crown. Therefore, in this case, the clinical crown is longer than the anatomical crown. And for root, now the crown portion is more visible to us. So the part of the tooth which is visible into the oral cavity is supposed to be the part of the crown. So in this case, the anatomical root is longer than the clinical root because this part is now the part of the crown. This part is now supposed to be the part of the clinical crown. And the junction of the clinical crown and the clinical root, this is known as the cervical line. And also the enamel is in the anatomical crown and in anatomical root cementum. It is made up of cementum. So this is called as the cemento-enamel junction because here the cementum meets with the enamel. So it is known as the cemento-enamel junction. This question is important from the university point of view. And the question can directly come, what is the difference between clinical root, clinical crown, and what is the difference between anatomical root and anatomical root and clinical root? So you have to make all the diagrams. You can also use the diagram of gingival recession, and you can make the diagram of gingival enlargement, how the clinical crown becomes smaller than the anatomical crown in case of gingival enlargement, and in case of gingival recession, how the clinical crown becomes longer than the anatomical crown. You can make diagrams, and for 5 marks, this much matter is enough. Next is structure of a tooth. A tooth is made up of 2 parts. One is hard tissues and the second is soft tissues. The hard tissues are enamel, dentine and cementum, and the soft tissue is pulp. All this, the crown surface, the outer crown surface is the enamel. This is dentine. And this is cementum. This is the radicular dentine. Radicular, whenever we use the word radicular, it means that it is related to root. And when we say coronal, it is related to crown. So this is the coronal dentine and this is the radicular dentine. This is the proximal view of a tooth. Proximal means the side part, either mesial or distal. Okay, so it denotes enamel here, then dentine, and then pulp, and then this is the cementum. So the pulp that is present in the crown portion is the coronal pulp. Pulp that is present in the radicular, in the root region, is known as the radicular pulp. And this is the apical foramen. It is the part where all the nerves and the blood vessels from the tooth, they leave the tooth, or you can say they enter the tooth from the bone. This is a more detailed diagram. You can see the enamel, dentine, coronal pulp, radicular pulp, gingiva. This is gingiva, gums. Okay, this is the CEJ where enamel and cementum meet. The cementum, this is pedial ligament. We will do this in detail in histology. You just remember this diagram for this file now. Alveolar process is the bone in which the tooth is present. Okay, periodontal ligament is which surrounds the root of a tooth. We'll discuss a few points about each of the components of a tooth. First is enamel. It is the hardest substance in the human body. Hardest substance in the human body, although it is very much brittle. Brittle is something which can be easily broken off. And why is it brittle? Because it is made up of 96% of inorganic material. Therefore, it is so brittle. Even though it is very hard, it is the hardest part in the human body, but it is very brittle. And 4% is the organic part. 4% is the organic material. Enamel, it only covers, or enamel is only present in the crown. And enamel is not seen in the root. Enamel, unlike dentine and cementum or bone, it does not show a continuous formation throughout the life. Once the crown formation is complete, no more enamel is deposited. So, therefore, we can say that once enamel is lost, no new enamel is formed in a tooth. Okay, and the enamel, it develops from the enamel organ. This is also a viva question, that what does enamel develop from? It develops from enamel organ. Next is dentine. It forms the major bulk of a tooth. Major bulk of a tooth is formed by dentine. This is important for NEET. Okay, and also viva question, that what forms the bulk of the tooth? Dentine forms the bulk. It is present in both crown and root portion, unlike enamel, which is only present in the crown portion and not in the root portion. And next is, it is usually not exposed, only exposed when the tooth is badly worn out. Okay, so it is present beneath the enamel. Dentine is present beneath the enamel in case of crown, and in case of root, it is present beneath the cementum. And it is made up of collagen. It is made up of collagen, and it compensates for the brittleness of the enamel. It provides a cushioning surface. It provides a cushioning effect to the tooth. Okay, it provides this is also a viva question. Cushioning effect to the tooth, and it compensates for the brittleness of enamel. And dentine, it originates, or it is formed from the dental papilla. Dental papilla. It is mesodermal in origin. The enamel is ectodermal in origin. Okay, enamel is made from the enamel organ, and dentine is made from the dental papilla. This is mesodermal in origin, and this is ectodermal in origin. These are also viva questions. Enamel is ectodermal in origin, and dental papilla or dentine is mesodermal. Third is cementum. Cementum is also hard tissue. It is part of the hard tissues, and the question here is that it is avascular. This is important for NEET. That cementum is the avascular tissue, and it covers the root portion. It is present in root and not in the crown. Enamel is present in crown and not in root, but cementum is present in the root and not in the crown. Okay, it gives attachment to the pedial ligament. Attachment to pedial ligament, which attaches it to the bone. And it develops from dental sac. We will do this in detail when we do histology. What is dental sac? What is dental papilla? What is enamel organ? Okay. Fourth is pulp. Pulp is a specialized connective tissue and it is also soft tissue. It has blood vessels and nerves. Okay. The part of the pulp which is present in the crown portion, it is known as the pulp chamber, and in case of root, the part of the pulp is known as root canal. Functions of pulp are formative, sensory, and defense. If question is asked in NEET MDS that what is the most important function of pulp and these options are given, you have to choose formative. Okay, this is also one important question. What is the most important function of pulp? It is because it has cells that will form dentine and dentine protects the pulp in return. Okay, and we know that pulp is present in the core. It is present. This is pulp. And pulp also it develops from dental papilla. Develops from dental papilla, which is also mesodermal in origin. Mesodermal in origin. We can make a little small flow chart. Enamel is made from enamel organ. Enamel organ. Dentine is made from dental papilla. Pulp is also from dental papilla. And cementum is from dental sac. These are important Viva questions. In the next video, we will do all the basic terminologies important in dental anatomy, and that is how we will finish the first chapter, Introduction to Dental Anatomy. If you want a PDF of these notes, you can text me on Instagram. I will put my link in the description. And if you need any more help or if you need to ask me anything, you can comment below or you can text me on Instagram. I'll be making these videos in series, but if you want any specific topic before, you can comment below or you can text me on Instagram or however it suits you. Thank you for watching and please subscribe if you have still not, and see you in next video.